Hello everyone, Austin here with the Limestone Library, joining you for another Thursday chess video. I wanted to take this time to go over a game, a very famous game, showing the importance of developing our pieces in a chess game. When you get the chance, go ahead and take a look at the previous two videos that I posted. One of them is about all of the useful online chess resources that are available to you. And then the other one is about how to practice tactics in a chess game, how to forcefully win pieces from your opponent, as well as get checkmates using those maneuvers. So this is one of my favorite games, and it's one of the most famous games of all time. It shows the importance of developing your pieces in a chess game and attacking with your entire army rather than just a couple or a few pieces. If you just happen to walk by a chess game with just some random people playing, you might see any combination of crazy openings, crazy styles of play. You could see people just moving their pawns and trying to set up some kind of a wall like this, and those just aren't very good ways to play. So I do want to take this time to highlight the importance of developing your pieces in a chess game and how powerful these pieces can be. Pawns are good. I really like pawns. They're some of my favorite pieces to play around with and use them to win a game very slowly. But pieces are really, really fast and powerful. So this game. Oh, and by the way, I'm on leechess.org right now. It's one of the websites that I highlighted in my first video, and I'm in the study feature. And this feature is awesome. I use it for all of my online lessons. And in this study feature, you can, with any number of people, I usually just do it with, it's usually just me and a student. But with any number of people, you can all get in Discord or Skype or whatever your favorite VoIP is, and you can go over a chess game and you can draw lines and you can move pieces and all different colors, and you can all see the same thing on the board. It really is nice. And you can even, if there's like a really good position that you like let's say let's go over here, you can even click on a preloaded position and then look at it with all your friends and or students or chess club or whatever. So it really is just a nice feature. So that's where I'm at right now, and you can just find that by going to learn and then to study. And I did highlight this in my video. And then you can go to my studies for your studies, or there's all kinds of different options, all kinds of studies out there. It really is a fantastic feature. It's my favorite by far. Okay, so back to the game. The game that we're looking at today is called the Opera Game. And it's called the Opera Game because it was played in an opera house. One of the most famous chess players of all time was playing the white pieces, and his name was Paul Morphy. He was an American chess player, and his heyday was, I would say, in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s, although probably 50s and 60s mostly. He was I would say the first true chess master who really, really understood the game. And his games are very good to look at. You can just Google Paul Morphy and his games will pop up. His games are really good to look at because he understood how important developing was, and his opponents very frequently didn't. So you get to see someone who's incredibly skilled and see how he, the techniques that he uses to beat his opponents. So he was playing the white pieces, and he was a pretty famous chess player at the time, about as famous as you could be for a chess player. And it was a different time, so chess was, he had probably more notoriety than he might, in maybe even today, I don't know. But he was visiting France, and he was in an opera house in France. And there were two people who saw him. It was a French aristocrat and a German nobleman, and they both wanted to play him in a game of chess. Well, Morphy wanted to watch the opera, so he kind of paid attention to the chess game, and the other two people, the French aristocrat and the German nobleman, they played the black side, and they consulted amongst themselves. So you have two people on one side trying to figure out the best move against someone who might be the most talented chess player of all time. So you're in for a treat today. I picked a good first game to go over. So Morphy opens up with one of the most common moves, certainly the most common move at this time, and that's king pawn to e4. And this move right from the get-go, it encourages good, sound development. The light-squared bishop can come out, and the queen can come out, although she likely won't come out for a while. Unless she's forced to come out, we usually want to develop our knights and our bishops first. So, and it's important here, if white got to move again, they would probably play d4. It's a very powerful position to have both your pawns in the center of the board. Pawns are scary early on in the game. They can push pieces around. No piece wants to be captured by a pawn because they're not very valuable. So usually if you move a pawn to threaten a piece, like this, pawn to e5 to threaten the knight, they're going to move the knight. This is not a good trade for black to make. So black plays pawn to e5, and this move is very simple. It does the same strong developing, or it opens up the same pieces that white did for developing, but it also stops this d4 move that white would very much like to play. So white plays knight to f3, and this is the first of many moves where you get to see how good white was at developing their pieces, and he developed his pieces really rapidly, which, how do you do that in a turn-based game? How do you develop your pieces faster than your opponent? Well, you usually do it by developing and doing something else. So it's usually developing with check, developing with a capture, or developing with a threat. And when you're developing and your opponent and you're attacking and your opponent's just defending, you're eventually going to overwhelm them. So that's what we get to see in this game, and it's really entertaining. So they play pawn to d6, which looks like a meek move, but it's actually perfectly fine. I play this defense myself. It's a very solid structural defense. And something else that this knight move did, it was a very multi-purpose move. Sure, it develops a piece, and it makes castling a little bit easier, but it's a multi-purpose move. It attacked the pawn, but it also controlled the d4 square, and Morphy looks to take advantage of this right now. He doesn't want to do it on this move, because then after pawn takes and then queen takes, well, now this queen's in the center of the board, and she's very liable to get kicked around. See, this is a developing move that also attacks something. And then now white has to defend, move their queen somewhere. So this is just not how Morphy wanted to play here. So if you just freaked out for a second there because you don't know what happened, I just clicked over to the side, and I went back to the previous position. So Morphy had just played the move pawn to d4. So black should really probably take this pawn. That's why their pawn's in the center. I mentioned that right when they move the pawn to e5. You move the pawn to e5 to stop your opponent from playing d4. So when they play d4, you should take that pawn. Otherwise, it's very possible for white to gain a lot of space very quickly with these two center pawns. So instead of doing that, they made a move that looks okay. There's definitely some reasoning behind it. It seems logical with bishop g4, but it just doesn't really get the job done. So they definitely should have taken the pawn, but we're about to see why bishop g4 just doesn't really work. Now here, it's easy for the beginner or even intermediate player to play a move like h3 or bishop e2 and to try to react to your opponent. But Morphy shows us that it really is better to make our opponent continuously react to us as much as we possibly can. So he goes ahead and takes the pawn here on e5. That was what he was doing here. He has the knight attacking the pawn, and he has the pawn attacking the pawn on e5. So he's going to continue with what he was doing. Now the knight is pinned, though. So this knight can't move. So after a capture, we definitely don't want to take that pawn. We're going to be very unsatisfied with the results. But after capturing, black saw that, well, if black takes back, Morphy has a check. Morphy can trade queens first, sort of an in-between move. And then after king takes, well, now there's no queen here. So the bishop's just clawing at air. And now the knight hits the bishop and the pawn on f7, which is very weak. So we have to run away and guard that pawn on f7. So that's not how the game went. Black was a very good player, both of them. So they did see this, and even though they played a subpar opening move, they did see that, okay, let's take the knight first, and if you want, this would be a really good time to pause the video, and you can certainly do this on every single move. Pause the video and see if you can guess the move. And this is a very effective way of getting better at chess, finding master games that are annotated. They have reasoning behind the moves, and then to pause and try to guess the moves. It really is one of the most effective ways to get better. So here, Morphy could have taken with the pawn, but he figures, okay, I'm gonna develop a piece. I'm gonna recapture and develop a piece. And sure, it's my queen, but there's nothing that can attack it. It's on a light square, and the light square bishop's gone. So the queen is safe here. The knights are too far away to attack it, so he was pretty happy playing this move. Okay, so queen takes f3, and now it is here that black is safe to recapture, and the position's equal, but we're going to see very quickly how black starts to get overwhelmed. So again, you can pause your video and try to come up with Morphy's idea, and his idea here is, well, he's going to develop a piece, and he's going to attack again. So he plays bishop to c4, and has his pieces working together on a very weak pawn that's only defended by the king. So black defends, and he defends in what seems like a natural way, but it's too late to be playing these natural, logical moves. Black needs to really pull a rabbit out of the hat to try to defend and stay in the game here. The move that he plays is knight f6, which looks perfectly fine. It blocks the queen from attacking the pawn on f7. It develops a knight. It looks great. It looks like he's developing and defending. But unfortunately, he has too many weaknesses. He gave away his light-squared bishop for just a knight, when he really probably didn't need to. He really should have been developing his pieces instead. So this is a great move to pause the video on once again, and to figure out, okay, well, how did Morphy continue his attack? Because it seems like he's getting boxed out. Those two squares are controlled. It doesn't seem like there's a good way for the queen to infiltrate. So what Morphy does is he finds two weak light squares with pawns on them, and they're light squares because, again, black gave away their light squared bishop, so that's an unnecessary weakness that they created for themselves, and Morphy attacks both of them at the same time with queen to b3. So not easy to defend here, but it's very important to defend the right pawn. If you don't defend the right pawn and you play b6 and you defend the b pawn, you're getting checkmated very, very quickly. So we can't have that, and here it's just important to note that the queen's guarding the bishop, so there's no real way out for the king. So we can't have that, and black plays the best move, which is queen to e7. Defending the important pawn, the one next to the king, and also sort of laying a little bit of a trap. If Morphy's not careful, he is, but if he wasn't careful, he could have played queen takes b7, and it looks like he's just winning the rook, but black has a check. Checks and captures are very powerful moves for doing multiple things at the same time. So black would really like to attack the queen and attack the bishop and try to defend the rook. There's so many things, you want to try to lure the queen away from the rook. It's very difficult, but we have this check. And that check just does everything that black needs it to. And white would win a pawn, but white's attack kind of just fizzles out, unfortunately. So, and then here, yeah, I suppose we would block probably with the pawn. But yeah, it's just, man, what an unfortunate circumstance. It looked like we were winning a rook, and now it just kind of blows up. I'm sure white's still better there. I'm sure Morphy saw this and he was like, no, I'm not really going to do that either. Similarly, Morphy could play a check here first, and after queen takes, well, now he's probably safe to take this. But this is not really that easy of a position. Now black can start developing. Remember the importance of development. And, okay, white's given away a bishop, but they got a rook for it in return. But unfortunately, well, after let's say castles to defend the knight with the rook, and after white castles, pawn to c6 to trap the queen here, and it's almost unclear if white's still winning. Now this is a good time actually to show you we can figure out if white's still winning. White's not winning. Okay. So, maybe white shouldn't have castled here. I'm not sure. It's a very complicated position. It's hard to imagine what other... I guess you can move the queen out. Can you? I guess we'll go back. We'll go back and see. No, you can't do that. So you can't even take the rook after bishop to c5. So that's a very tough thing to figure out. It looks like it wants white to check here and then take this rook. And that makes a little bit more sense. After bishop takes f2, we're under attack though, and again, that's another really, really hard position to play. So that's just this button right here to toggle the computer evaluation. And the computer's not always right, but it knows what it's talking about most of the time. So, okay. I would say it's right probably 99.9% of the time, but it's not perfect. Okay. So black plays queen to e7, and of course Morphy sees this. So Morphy decides, okay, and he sees this, he sees this, he sees that, okay, I don't really want to go into those positions. Those are messy. Why not just continue doing what I've been doing? Develop a piece. And what we have here is, well, Morphy has developed another piece, but he's also stopped queen b4 from being check. So if black plays queen b4 now, well, bishop takes f7 check is pretty good. So we don't want to do that as black. Okay, so black sees, okay, well, this is now under attack. How do we defend it? Let's play pawn to c6, and black defends the pawn with the queen. c6 is a very good move. This makes perfect sense. And again as Morphy, and again you can pause if you want, Morphy has to develop another piece and continue attacking. Now, Morphy could castle. Absolutely could castle, but where's the need to castle when your king's not really under attack? He can keep on putting the pressure on his opponent. So he plays bishop to g5, developing his last minor piece. Again, the minor pieces, the knights and the bishops, very important to develop in the opening and improve them in the middle game. So bishop to g5 develops the bishop. It also pins the knight. And we get to a very interesting position, one of my favorite positions to show how effective development can be. White has 4 pieces developed and on very good squares. And black, well, not so much. Their knight's developed, but it can't move. And that's the whole point of developing pieces. You develop them in the center so that they have a lot of squares to move to. Well, the knight can't move. The queen has moved off of her original square, but she's only blocking the bishop from getting out, which is blocking the king from castling, which is blocking this rook from getting out. So we have just this this domino effect of negative development that's just not working for black. And the only real obvious mistake that we can point out for black is that, well, they gave away their light square bishop when instead they should have just played a simple capture in the center, would have done just fine for them. So they gave away their light squared bishop just for a knight, and then this knight f6 move. But that knight f6 move looked fine. It's hard to point at that as the first mistake. So black responds with a move that they should not be able to play. They're losing so much in development, and even though they decide, okay, let's lash out for an attack and play b5. And this should just never work. If you're beating your opponent this badly and they lash out and attack you, it's probably not a very sound attack when you have so much development like we pointed out earlier. So white sees this, and I can only imagine almost immediately plays knight takes b5, just opening up an avenue to the king, and I think most importantly, preserving the light squared bishop. It is the light squares on the black side that are weak, so let's keep this piece safe. Black takes back, and white takes the pawn. They do take with the bishop. If they take with the queen, black just has more options. If they take with the queen, black can defend here with the queen. And We can take this pawn, but then after bishop e7, black's ready to castle. Excuse me. Black would be ready to castle there, and it seems like white's kind of in control in the driver's seat, but we have to remember that even though white won a few pawns, white's also down a piece. White is down, well, a knight for 1, 2, 3 pawns. So the point value checks out as being equal, but I think I would rather have black here. I would rather have the extra piece. So we'll come back. And Morphy, I mean, he starts a very sound attack. And in general, when you're starting an attack like this, you do want to start your attack with the weaker piece and then finish the attack with the stronger piece. So this is what we see here. And black defends with knight b to d7. And okay, now Morphy does what he's supposed to do, what every good chess player should do in a position like this. Look at your back rank. What pieces still need to get into the game? And the answer is the rooks. So he castles queenside, bringing the rook into the game and simultaneously bringing the king to safety, but also connecting the rooks. And this is just, I can't even stress how important this is. Everything about this game is seamless and perfect from white. It really is just a masterpiece. Which is why those small mistakes like giving away the bishop for the knight, those small mistakes from black really did it in for him because he's playing probably the most talented player of all time. So black defends, which is something that's becoming all too familiar. And it's very easy to look at this position as white and go, okay, well, I want to move my rook here, so let's just move my rook forward and then bring it behind and double the rooks for a battery. But Morphy has an even better idea than that. It's just too good. See, the problem is, after rook d2, it gives black one measly move to defend, and Morphy hasn't given black any moves to defend for the whole game, so he doesn't even want to give black this move. So instead of going rook d2 and giving black a move to defend, Morphy plays, once again, a tempo move. And he moves this rook and captures the knight. So now there's no time to defend. Black has to recapture, or his whole position is crumbling. So black recaptures with the rook. And, well, remember how important I said this light squared bishop was? You know, Morphy sacrificed the knight instead because of the weak light squares from black. So we hold on to the light squared bishop, and now we bring the final piece into the game. Very poetic. So now we're putting a ton of pressure on this rook. The knight's pinned, so this knight is not defending that rook unless black really wants to part with their queen for some reason. But black gets a move to at least try to fix this. So they play queen to e6, offering a queen trade, but white doesn't want to take it. White's attacking. White's in the driver's seat, so there's just no need for white to make this queen exchange. White needs that queen to attack. Now, this is a really funny checkmate. Black can also play what looks like a more aggressive queen exchange, and it is more aggressive, with queen to b4, but they do have to be careful because white has a very sneaky move. White could play bishop takes f6, and then black, you know, sort of missing this, might go for this queen exchange, be a little bit too overzealous because black really does want to get the queens off the board. And then, well, this bishop delivers checkmate, guarded by the rook. So, and with the queen just knocking on the door of the white king. So black can't really do that. So they decide on queen to e6. I'm not sure if they saw queen b4 and the rest of that. It's possible that they looked at it. But queen to e6 to offer the queen trade, and I think more importantly, to break the pin here. So now the knight actually does guard the bishop. And it seems like black's holding. Barely holding on, but holding on. And if they can castle, black is up an entire rook. But this is the rook, and that's Morphy's point. You may sacrifice pieces for an attack in chess if your opponent can't get the rest of their pieces out. If those pieces stay on the back row, they just don't matter. So we're at a point here in the game where Morphe has all of his pieces out now. So now there's no more developing and attacking. Now we have to finish the attack. So one last time, pause the video and see if you can find the continuation that Morphe uses to win the game. Now this continuation, just like the rest of them, all of the maneuvers that Morphe has done and avoided, it's completely forced. Morphe's not playing a trick on his opponent. Morphe could tell him what moves he's going to do, and there's nothing that black can do about it. And that's the beauty of chess tactics. So Morphe starts his attack, like many of them do. He starts it with a check. Bishop takes on d7 check, and black has to get out of that check, so black takes with the knight. That was black's entire plan. That was why they moved the queen. And Morphe continues looking at checks. He notices that, well, and I'm sure he noticed this a long time ago, but he notices that the black king is stalemated. It cannot move anywhere. And there's even an interesting little convergence here with his two pieces. They could work together here and deliver mate on this back rank if only this knight had moved. So if we look at every check on the board, we find this check, trading queens, which we don't really want to do, and we find this check giving away our queen, which usually we don't want to do, but Morphe spots brilliance. And he plays queen to b8 check, making the knight move onto the square b8, and now we have it. The final check, delivering checkmate to end the game. So that totally forced a 3-move mate at the end of the game. You know, black could have held out a little bit longer, but they would have needed to give away their queen, and it would have just been pointless at the end there if they had decided to do that. So this is how the game ends, and I gotta tell you, black's not looking too good here. It looks like black is setting up for the next game with all their pieces still on the back row. So this is, without a doubt, one of the most instructive games that you can find out there. You know, you just have perfection from white, developing every piece extremely quickly, and then not attacking until until it's safe. Not attacking until they have their entire army developed. It really is just it's a work of art. So, let me know what you think about this game. Let me know if there's any other games that you want me to annotate over. There really are a ton that I could pick. If there's a theme that you'd like to see, I can absolutely find a game that fits that theme. Again, this one being the theme of development. Again, I will leave my my email, my chess.com username, and my LeeChess username in the description. So if you do have a chess question or you want to play a game with me, just let me know. Just send me a message, and I'd be happy to do that. Other than that, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.